Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey, and here let's check out a really awesome destruction asset called Rayfire. This one lets you easily add super realistic fragments onto your games, so you can easily shatter glass, break wood into splinters, or make concrete crumble. You can trigger it with an explosion, with a collision, or by shooting some bullets. You can even pre-shatter objects or do all of that destruction in runtime, and it even works on skinned meshes so you can easily slice your enemies in half. This video is split in two parts. First, let's look at some of the demos to see what the asset can do and how they work. Then after that, I'll do a step-by-step guide on how to start using it and add it to your games. There's also timestamps in the video if you want to look ahead. Check out the entire asset review playlist where I highlight great assets to help you make your games awesome. This video is sponsored by Unity, which is currently running the massive Black Friday sale on the Unity Asset Store. There's over 500 assets, all heavily discounted, everything from tools to models, animations, and tons of effects. On top of that, this sale also has lightning deals, which start at 90% off and slowly go down in discount as more and more people buy the asset. So that means that if you get it quickly, you can get a massive discount. I also made a video and a list covering some of the best highlights. The sale is on until the 4th of December, so check it out with a link in the description. And this asset is also discounted as part of the sale, so if you like what you see in this video, go ahead and pick it up before the discount ends. And if you're watching this after the sale is over, then you can instead use the coupon code Monkey10 to get 10% off your order. Okay, so Rayfire. This is an awesome asset for adding destruction onto your games. There's mountains of settings, so you can destroy objects exactly as you want them. You can make glass that shatters into 1,000,000 pieces, or concrete that breaks into big chunks, or some wood that breaks into splinters, or really just about anything. There's tons of options for how you want the destruction to happen, and then even more options for how you want to trigger that destruction. So you can trigger it with a gun shooting some bullets, or maybe with an explosion, or just some contact by things falling on top of each other, or maybe even some wind or anything you want. It is also very easy to use. You just add the component for whatever behavior you want, play around the settings, and that's pretty much it. In the end, when I do my demo, you will see how it takes just a few minutes to set it all up. This one is definitely one of the most impressive assets I've seen. It does exactly what it's meant to do in an excellent way. And it's also very performant with a huge amount of debris and tons of options to get it performing exactly as you want it, so you can push it to its limits with tons of objects in order to run the game on consoles or PCs, but you can also lower the simulation, lower the amount of objects, and get it working on mobile. Now also I should mention there is one limitation on this asset that may or may not be an issue for you. As of the time of this recording, it does not support runtime fragmentation on consoles. You can still do all of the edit time things, so you can pre-shatter objects, record their behavior, and slice them, but all of that has to be prepared in edit mode. Again, that means it works on consoles, you just have to use the pre-shatter methods and not share them in runtime. So from what I've tried, that doesn't seem like a huge limitation, but still, if you're making a game specifically for consoles, do keep it in mind and possibly do some testing beforehand. Okay, so here I've got my project and I imported the package. Now as for documentation, this asset has a massive amount, which is always excellent. You have a where to start text file. This one directs you into the info how to folder. And if you go inside, you can see a ton of documentation. Then there is also a really awesome playlist on YouTube. So you've got tons of tutorial videos for pretty much any kind of topic. So all of these videos explain all of the components, all of their settings and everything. So as you can see, tons of stuff, really awesome. And if you want, you can even contact the developer directly on Discord or through email. Now on the text documentation, you have very highly detailed documents explaining each individual component. So for example, over here, the Rayfire widget, this is one of the most important ones. You can look at it and yep, here is a really detailed, really in-depth component explaining everything that this does. So for example, this one, the main purpose is advanced physics control and runtime demolitions. Then every single option is nicely explained. So for example, the initialization, you've got by method or by start, so it explains the differences. It also has links to those really in-depth YouTube videos. And there you go, so explain everything about the simulation type, about the object type, and so on. So really, in terms of documentation, this asset is absolutely excellent. Then you've also got a how-to folder, and this one has all kinds of scenarios with really nice step-by-step instructions. So for example, do you want to know how to demolish a mesh object in runtime caused by a collision? So you just go here and you've got really nice step-by-step instructions for how to make it all that happen. And finally, you've got a massive amount of tutorial and demo scenes. Let's look at some of these to see how this works. For example, under the shatter folder, you can see all of the various shatter types. So for example, let's start with Voronoi. Here you see a nice simple demo with just some basic walls. You can see they're using the standard mesh filter component as well as the mesh render. And then this one has a Rayfire shatter component. So right now you see the normal object, just a basic wall, and then you hit on fragment, and now you can see a preview of how this object will be fragmented. So it generates all of these individual fragments, and all of them generated using all of these settings. So you can see in the hierarchy how it dynamically generated all of these objects based on these settings. So for example, I can delete the last, increase the amount by quite a bit, fragment a bit more, and there you go, a bunch more. Over here on the scale preview, you can increase or decrease in order to really see all of the various pieces. You can put into color in order to really see it, and you can also just delete the preview. So all of these demos, they've got various objects to showcase various things. So for example, this one has the amount set to 30, so it creates 30 fragments. Then this one has 400, so it fragments into 400 segments. And then over here, this one has a center bias. Over here on the center bias, it is set nearly to 1. And there's actually a gizmo that you can move. However, like this, if I'm using the move tool and I move it in there, it's actually moving the object. That's because the gizmo is placed on the exact same position, but if I swap into the hand tool, now the normal move gizmo is hidden, so I can only see the one for this gizmo. So there you go, so that's the center bias, and if you hit on fragment, yep, there you go. So you've got more fragments around that area and less as it goes further away. So you can play around the center bias to make it more or less focused on this specific point. So for example, this setting will be very useful when later on we'll look into using a gun in order to shoot an object and shatter more on the point of impact and less the far away it gets. So all of these are demonstrating basic fragments in simple cubes, and this final one shows how the whole thing also works based on custom meshes. So this mesh fragment, and there you go, the whole thing breaks into parts. So this one on this demo is just showing one type. So over here on the fragment type, on this drop-down menu, you see all the various types. So these are all using Voronoi. Then you've got various demos for all the various types. For example, over here, the splinters demo. So this one is perfect for simulating some kind of wood. So as you can see, it splinters in a really nice area. Then you can also play around the axes, so you can get all kinds of these with all various amounts of things. So that one is almost completely straight. Then this one is going the other way, and this one is going on the Z axis. And again, all of this also works on complex meshes. So this one would be perfect for any kind of wood material. Then you've got slabs, so this one would be great for some kind of concrete, so it creates nice big chunks. Then you've got radial, so this one looks really cool, look at that, really nice. And again, you can change the center bias. So for example, this one would be perfect for some glass. Let's say we throw a rock right on that corner and fragment, and there you go, it all breaks perfectly. So as you can see, you've got all kinds of custom shatter types. You also have a really interesting one that's more kind of like a tool, so this one, decompose. So sometimes you might have a mesh which is separated into parts, but it's all part of one mesh, so all of this is one singular object. But if you fragment using decompose, then all of a sudden you get these really nice separate fragments. So just a nice useful tool. Okay, so all of these are just showing the shadow types. Then we see some more about actual simulations. Again, these demos are really excellent, showing all kinds of scenarios and how all of the options work. So for example, here on simulation type, if we run this one looking at the demo, there you go, all of them fall down, and yep, when there's a collision, they trigger the crash. These are all really nicely named, so you can see that this one is testing the simulation dynamic. So over there, simulation type on dynamic. So this one is initialized at start. So as soon as it starts, this object with all of these fragments, they are all set up as dynamic, so they automatically start falling. Then for this one, they start off as sleeping. So all the fragments are there, but they're only simulated after a collision happens. And this one is also similar. This one is inactive, so as soon as there's a collision, they become active. And the final one is kinematic, so this one affects other things, but it does not get affected. So that is why when we fall, the one on the left falls right away, these two happen on collision, and that one does not fall. So again, all of this demonstrates all of the various ways that you can use this asset. Then this demo is showcasing the mesh demolition types. So this one only generates the destruction on runtime, so as it falls. Right now, as you can see, it's just one solid object, and as it falls down, when it actually hits, does it actually generate the destruction. And these two, awake pre-cache and awake pre-fragment. So instead of waiting for a collision to happen, these automatically generate all of the various pieces as soon as the game starts. And then when a collision happens, it actually creates those pieces, it spawns them, and there you go, they all fall down. Then this demo shows all of the physics materials. So for example, this one here is a heavy metal ball. So if I activate it, it starts falling down. And there you go, it's a heavy metal ball, so not much bounciness. Whereas this one is a rubber ball. So as it falls down, there you go, nice amount of bounciness. Then some of these showcase friction. So a piece of concrete, as you can see, it doesn't really slide down much. But if it's a piece of ice, there you go, it slides down nicely. Then here for destructibility, this one is made of metal, so it falls down and yep, just stays there. And this one is made of ice, so as it falls down, yep, it shatters into a million pieces. So all the pieces and all destruction that we saw, all of that can have any physics material that you want. Then over here on this demo, mesh demolition fragments, over here we can see the combination of all the shadow types that we saw being used in demolition. So this one right here falls down and shatters pretty normally. Then this one over here has a center bias, so if the rock only hits the side, then it only causes damage to the side. Then this one falls down and breaks into splinters. And this one falls down and breaks into a radial. And again, in all these demos, you can obviously inspect all of the components to see how they're all set up. So for example, this one with the splinters, you can see how it's set up. You can see the mesh demolition, it's set up to use shatter. And then down here, there's a nice Rayfire shatter component set to splinters and all that. So this is how you would set up your objects like glass, wood, and so on. You would define the shatter type, then when something happens in game, they shatter exactly as you want. Another really cool demo is over here, the blade. These ones, you've got a bunch of blades, so it's using the Rayfire blade component. And you can just click and drag and go and slice it. There you go, slices perfectly. And again, the docs are excellent for learning what all of these settings do. So for example, this one is set to on trigger on exit. So if I take the blade and I put it inside the object, it doesn't slice yet. Only when it leaves, then it actually causes a slice. There you go, one slice, another one. Also another interesting thing is over here on the demolition on the Rayfire rigid. Under depth, this is how many times this object can be demolished. So if you set to 1, it can only be sliced once. And if you set it to 0, it can be sliced infinite times. So here I've got the object and I can slice and go. There you go, generates that slice. And another one right there, and so on. And the whole thing falls down. Really nice. Then if you had a ton more demos showing all of the various ways that you can activate your objects. Connectivity, which is how you can put together multiple objects into a single structure. And then as well as dust and debris. So this asset also comes with some pre-built VFX to really make it look awesome. And of course with destruction, there's a really nice gun demo. So you have a virtual gun object with this Rayfire gun script. Then there's a second object for the target, so I can aim and shoot in there. And if you hit on plate and over here on the gun, you can see, and you can also see where it's going to hit, and you can fire a single shot, or you can just start shooting and really see how the whole thing happens. There you go, taking down that. And in this case, this one is using a connected structure. So after take out enough, and yep, there you go, the whole thing falls down. Really nice, really satisfying with all of the particles, debris, and so on. All of that, really nice. Okay, so like I said, this asset is really excellent when it comes to documentation. As you can see, tons and tons of demos showcasing every possible use case you could probably want, as well as all of the text-based documentation explaining every single component, how to do a bunch of things and so on, and all of those really awesome tutorial videos that make it really easy to learn. So this asset really gives you all the tools that you need in order to easily learn how it works and start applying it to your games. So with that said, let's go to the second part of this video and learn how to apply it to your own game. Okay, so here is my demo. I have my basic character, I can walk around, I can move, I can also aim, and I can shoot. Now I covered how all of this works in my third-person shooter video. And over here I've got some glass and behind it there's some targets, and right now if I shoot, yep, it all works. It destroys the glass, and back then it destroys the target, so I can shoot and destroy everything. Now as you can see, they vanish instantly, they just get destroyed. That's really not very satisfying, so let's use Rayfire to apply some destruction to this simple demo and see the massive difference that it makes. So the first thing we're going to need is a Rayfire gun, so let's make a new game object, let's call it a gun. And now on component, let's add a component, go down into Rayfire, and down here let's choose Rayfire gun. Then here to make things easy to aim, let's also add a target. So just an empty game object for the gun target, and just assign it. And just like this, yep, now we have the target and I can move the target in order to aim anywhere. Okay, now for these fields, one of the more important ones is over here the radius, so this is how big we want to hit. So like this, it will hit every object in this area, but for a gun we really want to be quite a bit smaller, so maybe like this looks good. And then for the strength, this is how much force the gun will impact. So let's increase by a little bit, but not too much. And finally for damage, this is how we're going to actually destroy the rigid body object. So you could just put it on max or just put it at 1, and then essentially we give it a health of just 1. So for that, let's go into the glass object. And over here, add a component, and for this one, let's go into Rayfire and add a basic Rayfire rigid component. Now for initialization, let's initialize it immediately at start, okay. For the simulation type, in order to make this more performant, we can actually start this off as inactive. Then for the object type, this one is a mesh. Demolition type, let's make it on runtime. And then over here for the activation, let's activate it on impact. So it starts off inactive and then activates. Next up, let's go over here into the physics. And over here we can modify the material type. And one of the included ones is glass, so that's perfect for this one. And everything else can stay with the defaults. Let's just make sure we destroy this using damage. So down here under damage, let's enable damage and put max damage of just 1. Okay, so we should be able to shoot the glass and see the glass break, so let's see. So the game is currently running. I've got the gun selected and head on single shot. And there you go. Yep, it does indeed shatter the glass. Okay, so far so good. Now let's play around with the fragments to make them look a bit more like glass. Like this, it's way too big fragments. We want it a bit smaller. So back in the glass component, let's add another one. Again, go inside of Rayfire, and this time we want a Rayfire shatter. We want to use this to define how it's going to shatter. And also up here, let's go into the mesh demolition. Yep. And over here, we've got the use shatter. So let's enable this one. So now we're going to use the properties from down here. And of course, we can also test to see how it's going to be. So like that, that's the normal default shatter. But for glass, let's actually change the type. So instead of Voronoi, let's go with a radial. And again, we can test. Just need to play around over here with the center axes. And then let's also increase the number of rings. Okay, so like this, that's starting to look a bit more like glass. Now just one last thing, let's enable the contact bias. So up here, let's go into the mesh demolition settings. And here we've got the contact bias, and let's put it on maximum. So now if we shoot the glass, it should actually, let's just disable these fragments. So delete these fragments, grab the gun target, and let's actually try to hit it all the way up there in the corner. And now that area should shatter more than the rest. So let's see. So here in the gun, let's fire a single shot. And yep, there you go. It does fire all of that, and everything looks pretty great. All right, so far so good. Now, the one issue that we see is that the spawn pieces, look at these just hanging in midair. That's because they are spawned using the same simulation as the parent. So we set that one as inactive. So all of these pieces, they start off as inactive. So we need to activate them for them to actually follow along. So that's also an easy setting to change. So let's just go down here. It's under the demolition. Under mesh demolition over here on advanced, we've got the sim type. So inherit, this one takes the exact same one that the parent has. Or we can just put them on dynamic. So all of them will be dynamic. So now if we test, here's the gun. Let's hide the impact and let's fire a single shot. And yep, there you go. The whole thing breaks. All right, awesome. Okay, so the glass is looking perfect. Now let's handle the targets. Now the setup is going to be pretty similar, so we can actually just copy this component. So let's copy the component, the Rayfire rigid. Let's go into that target and let's paste the component. And we can also copy the shatter, just going to change the type. So also let's copy this one, go down to the target and paste it. Now let's just position the target so we can easily test. Okay, so it's aiming at the target. Now the difference is over here under physics. Instead of glass, that target is made of wood. So let's select that. Now we just need to change the shatter type. So let's go down here and swap from radial, and for wood makes sense to be splinters. Okay, now one extremely important thing when using this on a custom mesh like the one that I have here. If like this I click on fragment, you can see that nope, doesn't work. Nothing actually changed, so everything still looks exactly the same. So it's not actually fragmenting. Now the issue with that is because the mesh needs to be set up in a specific way. So let's go into the mesh. So up here on the mesh filter, let's go into this mesh. So here it is. And on the mesh over here under model on the import settings, we need to make sure that read write is indeed enabled. So if this one is disabled, it doesn't work. But if we enable, apply, then let's go back into our target. And now we can hit on fragment. And if there you go, all of the really nice fragments. So always keep that in mind when you use a custom mesh, make sure the mesh is marked as read write. Okay, so the target should be working, and let's apply the same thing over here to the pillars. So once again, we can just copy the same thing. The differences on this one is over here on the material type. Instead of wood, let's go with concrete. And then down here, instead of splinters, let's go with Voronoi. So like this, these are way too big chunks, so let's make them a bit smaller. So just increase the amount, pretty simple. Okay, that looks pretty decent. Okay, so with all this now we should be able to test. So let's just re-enable the glass object and let's test. Okay, so like this with the gun selected, let's fire a single shot. And there you go, the glass is down, and actually the pillar also went down. So we need to disable that. But let's see also over there on the target, and yep, the target splits into a million pieces. Alright, so it already looks pretty good. Now let's fix this issue with the pillar. The issue is that the object was demolished by collision, so we can just disable this or increase the solidity, either one works. So like this, that problem should be fixed. And also we can also polish this up by quite a bit by adding the included debris and dust effects. So once again, let's go into Rayfire. And let's add the Rayfire debris. And then also Rayfire, let's add the Rayfire dust. So just enable the event on all of them. Okay, so on the dust and debris, I just add the included materials. And now we can test. Okay, so I can now shoot the glass. And yep, it falls down, does not trigger destruction on the pillar. And now I can shoot the pillar, one shot. And yep, there you go, it does fall down. And the target as well. So there's a target, fire a shot, and there you go, it all works. Alright, awesome. So all that's left is to connect this to our character. So here's my camera script. Let's just add using Rayfire. And then let's add a serialized field. Let's make it of type Rayfire gun for the Rayfire gun. And also just a transform for the target. Okay, so here in the editor, just drag the references. Okay. Now down here is the shooting function. Again, I covered how this script works on the third-person shooter video. So we have the target position, which is the mouse wheel position. So we can just put the target on that position. So the Rayfire target, we set the position on the target position, and then we go into the Rayfire gun, and we call shoot. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Very simple. Let's test. Okay, so here I am, and as I aim and I shoot, if I shoot on the floor, you can see, yep, over there the target is being set. So down there you can see the target is correctly being teleported to exact mouse position where I'm shooting. Okay, so I can now move around. Let's try to shoot the glass. And yep, there you go, the whole thing falls down. Try to shoot that one, and yep, it does work. Try to shoot that one, and yep, everything falls down. So all the debris, all the particles, everything, really nice explosion. Now let's just apply those changes to all the prefabs and also fix this one where the particles are hanging in the air. So that one is pretty simple, just over here under activation for the pillar. Let's activate it by offset, so if they move by a tiny amount they become active. And finally just apply the changes, so these two components, apply them to the prefab. Okay, so here I am walking around, and let's take out the glass, and yep, it falls. Take out more of it, take out the target, and another target, take out all the glass, all the things. Take out all the pillars, and yep, look at that. Really nice, really awesome destruction. Everything blows over. Alright, so yeah, compare this with the previous one, and you can see the massive difference that this makes. Alright, there it is. And like you saw, all of this was added in just a few minutes, so the asset is really awesome and really easy to use. Okay, so for another fun demo, I want to look into slicing a skin mesh render. So over here, I've got a normal character just playing a idle animation, and with my mouse, I can change the slice angle, and when I click, yep, it slices the character perfectly. I also added some force, so like you saw, the character parts jump out. And I also added some simple slow motion. So let's slice like this, and now slice again, and there you go, the whole thing falls down. Really nice. So to set all this up was pretty easy. I just have this object which has the Rayfire blade component, and then on the character itself, the character has a skin mesh render, and then a Rayfire widget, and over here on object type, it is set as skin mesh. And also down here, under limitations, it is toggled slice by blade. Now one thing on how the Rayfire blade component works. As you saw in the official demos, you can usually just move it, but with the skin mesh render, for some reason I only managed to make it slice by adding over here on the targets list. So I assign the character over here, and then I've got a simple script. It just grabs the Rayfire blade component, and then when I press the mouse button, it simply calls slice target. Then to slice further, it just goes into the character transform, grabs all of the fragments from the Rayfire region and adds them to the target so I can slice them again. So here is the demo again, rotate, put the blade in anywhere like this, slice, and there you go, everything cuts nicely. Alright, so that's Rayfire. It's a really awesome destruction asset and the results really speak for themselves. You saw the massive difference it makes and how easy it was to add. All of the components are very well built with tons of options to get it working exactly as you want it, and the documentation is truly excellent, both in text format as well as the video tutorials. So if you have any part of your game that would benefit from some destruction, then I can highly recommend this asset. And don't forget to check out Unity's Black Friday sale. If you like this asset, then this is the best time to get it. And beyond that, check out all the other assets on sale. Pretty much all of the best ones are currently discounted. I hope you find this asset useful in your own projects. Check out the full asset review playlist for some more awesome assets. Let me know in the comments any suggestions for other assets I should review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.